Welcome to Valley Viewpoint. I'm Roger Johnson. My guests are Stephano Janavel and Ron Fleck. Stephen is a pastor. He's a pastor of the Waldensian church and recently became a participant in the Sabbath. And Ron is an interpreter since Stephen speaks Spanish. And so welcome to Valley Viewpoint, both of you.
Thank you.
We're going to talk about Stephen's history. And Ron, I'm so glad you're an interpreter. And you have been associated with Stephen through various ways. And recently, I understand, regarding a movie. Talk to us about...
Well, it's our privilege to be here this afternoon, and I wish he could speak English because he's got incredible things to say. But we did a film. We just finished a feature film on the Waldensians, and this was in October for 10 days in the Waldensian valleys in northwestern Italy. And I heard about this Waldensian pastor that was now keeping the Sabbath, the first one ever over there recently, and he has a little group of about 20 people and another pastor that's associated with him now just recently. And so we asked him to come along with us, so we filmed some historic sites, and that's why I got to know him and I got to love him, and he's just an awesome person. I wish that you could each meet him personally.
And I wish we could hear and understand his Spanish. I'm sure we could. Those of our audience that know Spanish, we could probably listen to his Spanish, and probably those would say, oh yes, we can understand fine.
Yeah, he actually speaks 4 languages. He speaks
French?
He speaks French
Italian?
fluently, Italian, Portuguese, and Spanish.
Oh my.
All fluently.
Oh.
Plus, I'm sure he understands the Hebrew and Greek and Latin because he's a trained theologian in the Waldensians.
Sorry, no English. Little English.
Well, you're getting some training right now listening to Ron interpret for you during this interview.
Yeah. Yes.
So Ron, how did you first meet? Now, obviously you went over there with I didn't know you were a videographer. I didn't know you made movies.
Well, I don't.
So who's behind all this?
I don't, but I've always wanted to go back over and finish the history that Jim Arabito started. He did the history, the Israel of the Alps, and then he was killed tragically in a plane crash several years later. But anyway, we went over there, and back in June last year, I heard about this pastor that went on a tour with Danielle Saban, who is, she works with our ministry, Second Hope Ministries International over there as a health evangelist, and she takes many people on tours, the General Conference people from Andrews University. The last time I was over there were people from South Korea, 80-some people at her place. They were taking them on a tour. And she said in June, she sent me an email that they had a Waldensian pastor that went on her tour, and when she fed him the vegan meal afterward, like she usually does after the tour, well, he started talking. He says, did you realize that the Waldensians used to keep the seventh-day Sabbath? She about fell out of her chair.
Now, why would she do that?
Because
almost do that.
Because the people now don't even know, most of the Waldensians don't even know that their ancestors kept the Sabbath. After years of persecution and massacres and everything, they lost their touch with their ancestry. And the light has basically gone out. The light that shines in darkness, that was their motto. And that light that shines in darkness is out. And according to Janavel, Pastor Janavel, they're basically in apostasy now, the Waldensian church. And they don't want a reformation, a revival, and that's why they've kind of ostracized him, actually.
Well, going back in history, I understand that most people don't realize that St. Patrick actually observed the Sabbath as the seventh day.
Sí, él dice que en San Patricio, mucha de la gente no sabe que él también guardaba el día sábado.
And the reason being is that he stood by the Word of God.
La razón era porque él estaba siguiendo la palabra de Dios.
Sí, hubieron muchos que,
He said there were many.
Que observaban el sábado.
There were many people that kept the Sabbath back in those days. Más fuerte.
And the Waldensians go back as far as St. Patrick's?
¿Hasta dónde eran los Waldenses? ¿Hasta San Patrick o más todavía?
No, nosotros consideramos que la raíz está en el siglo I.
We believe that the roots, the ancestral roots of the Waldensians go back clear to the 1st century.
That is
El término valdense
The term Waldensi
viene atribuido a el nacimiento del movimiento de los pobres de Lyon con Pedro Baldo.
and it somewhat goes back to the history of the poor people of Lyon, France, and Peter Waldo.
Y es considerado el movimiento evangélico más antiguo, ya del segundo milenio.
It's considered the most important evangelistic movement, the Waldensian movement.
Pero no obstante eso, el valdismo no nace con Baldo, es posterior a él.
But even though it became more prominent with Peter Waldo in the 11th century, the Waldensian movement did not start with them, but it went clear back to the 1st century.
Why don't we hear more about that? Maybe it's the same way we're just hearing more about St. Patrick's.
¿Por qué no hemos oído más de eso? Igual con St. Patrick, ¿verdad?
Se habla poco
It's very little is spoken about it
porque en el siglo XX
because in the 20th century
a la actualidad
and even till right now,
la teología liberal
the liberal theology
se ha extendido en un
has
modo tal
extended all over.
que ha relativizado todo.
It's relativized everything,
Y entonces lo que antes era una certeza,
which before was a truth,
ahora es
a
seriamente
reality,
cuestionado.
has been,
Y mañana
forgotten.
será absolutamente negado.
and tomorrow it won't even be negated. The truth, the reality of the past will not only be negated, but it will be denied in the future very soon with liberal theology,
Esto es referente a la historia
referring to history,
y mucho más penosamente hablamos de la interpretación de la escritura.
and even more painfully about the interpretation of the scriptures, the liberal theology.
So the concept that the
El
Sabbath
concepto del
began
sábado empezó
on the creation week, that
que
God
empezó
blessed and
durante la primera
sanctified
semana
and
de
hallowed the Sabbath.
creación, cuando Dios lo santificó y lo separó como un
That
día especial.
that concept is being lost
Ese concepto se está perdiendo.
Sí.
Yes.
due to evolutionary thinking and
Sí.
liberal ideas about
Por
creation.
las ideas liberales,
Las ideas liberales,
Evolución.
el evolucionismo dentro del
Evolutionism.
cristianismo, ¿verdad?
in liberal the evolutionism in creation in Christianity
Se ha intentado y se intenta
is trying to
a desnaturalizar la raíz.
denaturalize.
O sea, la fe y el razonamiento de hoy día es básicamente artificial.
Today the faith is just more of an artificial faith.
This movie, how do
Esta película.
you want it to be seen? And is it, you say the first part was shown recently?
Yesterday afternoon we showed the first part of this at the State Line Seventh-day Adventist Church. This movie, we went over with the idea that we wanted to confirm what Ellen White and other historians have said, that the Waldensians used to keep the Seventh-day Sabbath, but have since lost it, which we were able to do, fortunately, and primarily with his help and other Waldensian pastors that we talked to. The second thing we wanted to prove was that the Waldensians did not come from Peter Waldo like most people are saying today. This is a false teaching put out by the Roman Church because they want everything to go back to the Apostle Peter because they're built on the Apostle Peter. And because the Waldensians said they also went back to the apostles, they considered them a threat. And because they had the pure scriptures, they considered them a threat, and so they were persecuted and massacred terrible throughout the years.
So two different paradigms.
And we tried to confirm
The Roman Church desires, as you have, I'm just paraphrasing or just trying to, again,
que la
grasp
Iglesia
this.
Romana quiere
They want everything to go back to Peter.
quiere que toda la historia del cristianismo va a San Pedro con ellos.
Claro.
Yes.
And the other strain
Y el otro lado
goes back to the apostles
va hasta
and to
los
the
waldenses
scripture.
que van a la Biblia y a los apóstoles.
Exacto.
Exactly, he said.
Huh. how is this going? When you mentioned that you went over there to attempt to find evidence, and you indicated that there was. How did that?
It was amazing,
How did
Roger.
that
We had so many miracles. It was amazing, and people like this that nobody can argue with, because he's a Waldensian pastor. He has a theology degree. I mean, he's a church history specialist. And he showed us, that they kept the Sabbath up until 1532, when they had the council at Chanfaran. And that's when William Farel came and tried to get the Waldensians to join the Reformation movement. And the sad part is that in that council, we found out from Janavel that they could join and not feel alone anymore, feel like they wouldn't be persecuted so much because they could be part of a world church of Protestantism, but they had to give up certain beliefs, among which was the Seventh-day Sabbath. And
so you confirmed that there were Sabbatarian Waldenses up until 1532.
It wasn't that there were; they were almost all were.
Almost all.
And this was a shock to me, because I knew some, but he said almost all of them kept the Sabbath until then. But the reformers, they only went back to a certain part of the Bible. He said that the Sabbath was not really a major concern to the reformers, because their main concern was the basis of how we're saved.
Yes.
Justification by grace and faith.
Romans,
yeah. And so the Sabbath, Martin Luther considered the Sabbath kind of a diversionary thing, and because they didn't like the Jews, because they crucified Jesus. They wanted to have Martin Luther and some of the other reformers, they wanted to separate anything that had to do with the Jews away, including the Sabbath. This is what he's been explaining.
And then I heard at first, when Luther was so thrilled with the gospel, Romans 1:17, some of these experiences, he wanted to get the good news out to the Jewish people.
Él quería hablar a los judíos y darles las noticias.
He was anticipating that the Jewish people would respond to the good
news. Que iban a responder
news.
Con las nuevas, pero no.
But when they said no,
ellos no quieren.
Eso le molestó a él.
He said that really bothered him when they wouldn't accept.
That's what I heard.
Lutero era un hombre muy temperamental.
I read that.
Luther was a temperamental person.
Era una persona con un temple muy importante.
He was a very strong character.
When you read
Pero
Luther,
como todo ser humano,
like all human beings,
cometemos errores aún estando en la verdad.
We all, even though we might be in the truth, we all make mistakes.
Y creo que la herencia negativa de Lutero
His negative thinking
fue haber tenido un apreciamiento negativo con respecto al pueblo
He had a negative appreciation of the Jewish people.
We will take a break right now. Pastor Janavel and Ron Fleck will take a break. We'll be right back to hear more about the history of the Christian church and its interpretation of the scripture regarding the Sabbath, and then we'll hear more about Pastor Janavel's history. Welcome back to this interview about the Waldensian faith and some history comparisons and about the Sabbath. And we're talking with Ron Fleck, who's the interpreter for Stephano Janavel. And welcome both of you back.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I understand that Janavel is a very recognized Waldensian name.
Que es un nombre muy reconocido entre los waldenses.
Sí,
Yes.
Mi familia es una de las más antiguas.
My family is one of the most ancient families.
Que proviene
Which comes
directamente
directly.
del periodo de Pedro Waldo.
It comes directly from the period of Peter Waldo.
Los datos más antiguos que tenemos como familia
Our most ancient history in our family
salen al 1205 en Bobbio
go back to
Pellice.
1205 in Torre Pellice, in Bobbio Pellice, which is right close.
That is a long time ago for tracing a name.
El discurso es que los valdenses, como vivieron muchos siglos en un gueto en la montaña,
And the thing is that the Waldensians lived for a long time closed in the mountains there. They were forced to stay there in the mountains.
entonces en muchas familias, no en todas,
In many
se ha
families.
conservado una larga información genealógica.
So there's a really good genealogical history among these families that are tightly connected there.
Pero mi apellido
My last name
es conocido en el mundo valdense
is very
porque,
well known in the Waldensian world
porque en el 1600
because in 1600s
existió un valdense
there was a Waldensian
llamado
man,
Josué Janavel,
Joshua Janavel,
que fue un hombre que Dios usó poderosamente
because he was a man that God powerfully used
en momentos de gran tristeza
in
a causa
moments
de la
of
persecución.
great sadness because of the persecution at that time.
Es llamado el capitán de los valles.
He was called the captain of the valleys,
Y-
Joshua Janavel.
Y en este caso,
In this case,
yo soy descendiente
and I'm a descendant of him.
por la 12ª generación.
12 generations, he was my grandfather, 12 generations ago.
So Stephen's mission is to keep
Su
the
misión
name Janavel
Es
prominent
mantener el nombre de
regarding
Janavel
reforming and bringing people back to the
para
true Word of
mantener
God.
este nombre enfrente de la gente para renovar y revivir la gente
Sí.
hacia la religión de los
Sí,
santos.
Dios me ha mostrado
God has shown me
este instrumento
This instrument
que no es determinante, pero ayuda.
This name is not the determining factor, but it helps.
Yes.
Ayuda.
Talk to us, Stephen, about
Háblenos.
how you discovered your role
¿Cómo
and
descubriste
why you became
tu plan?
aware of the seventh day
Y
and the
cómo
fourth commandment
enteraste del sábado, del cuarto
regarding your own
mandamiento
personal
en
life?
su vida personal?
Sí, la llamada a servir a Dios
The call to serve God.
la sentí muy claramente en mi corazón ya desde niño, tenía 9 años.
When I was only 9 years old, I felt very clearly God calling me
Y
to His service.
con el paso de los años
As the years went by,
me formé para ello
I trained myself in that direction.
y tuve la oportunidad de servir al Señor en distintos pastorados,
I had the opportunity to serve Him as a pastor in different places.
especialmente en Uruguay,
In Uruguay,
donde hay una grande presencia
where
valdense.
there's a large Waldensian presence.
Los valdenses fundaron una colonia en Uruguay en el 1800.
In 1800, they formed a large colony there of Waldensians in Uruguay.
Y mis padres y abuelos se fueron a
My
Uruguay.
parents and
De Italia
grandparents went
fueron-
from Italy to Uruguay.
Y yo regresé a Italia ya.
And then now I've returned to Italy.
Yes, I was
Con-
thinking that now you've returned
Sí,
from
sí, sí,
South
sí.
America to
Sí.
back to Italy.
Porque he sentido siempre en mi corazón
Because I've always felt in my heart
de parte de Dios que
that from God,
mi trabajo tenía que estar en Italia.
my work has to be in Italy.
Y entonces recientemente, desde el 2015,
Recently, since 2015,
el Señor me ha permitido de regresar a los valles
God has
valdenses,
permitted me to return to the Waldensian valleys.
porque en años anteriores fui pastor, pero en otros lugares de Italia.
But before that, I was a pastor in different areas of Italy, but not in the valleys.
Y estando en los valles valdenses,
And being there in the valleys,
hemos iniciado una predicación de avivamiento.
and so we've started a revival, preaching revival there in the valleys.
Obviamente que no es simple.
It's
no es
not
simple.
simple, it's very difficult.
Es difícil romper con las
It's
tradiciones.
very difficult to break away from tradition.
Y el concepto del sábado
The concept of the Sabbath,
es una realidad que fui madurando en el tiempo.
it took me quite a while to develop that.
Ya mi padre, cuando yo era joven,
My father, when I was a young
en
person,
una oportunidad me dijo,
one time told me,
nuestros antepasados
he said, "Our ancestors,
observaban el sábado,
they all kept Sabbath,
Pero eso cambió cuando los valdenses adhirieron a la Reforma en 1532.
But he said, he told me that our ancestors gave that up when they joined the Reformation in 1532.
Y es un poco la herencia de los reformadores.
And there's some of the inheritance, the history of the reformers.
El desnaturalizar la herencia del Antiguo Testamento.
They tried to denaturalize and to separate the Old Testament from the New Testament, the reformers, some of them.
Mm-hmm. And so the very commandment that God knew we would
Y el
forget,
mismo
he
mandato
puts,
donde él dijo que no debemos de olvidar.
so he puts and underlines and begins, remember,
Donde dice,
remember.
recuerda el sábado.
Es cierto.
He
es
knew
cierto.
we would be prone to forget.
Él sabía que
God's
íbamos a
special day.
olvidar eso, ¿no?
Sí, sí, sin duda. Es precisamente, es algo que lo tengo muy presente.
That's why I think about it all the time.
En la Biblia tenemos
In the Bible,
permanentemente el llamado de Dios a tener memoria.
we're supposed to, according to the Bible, we're supposed to memorize the Bible.
En cambio, la teología liberal
But instead, the liberal theology
se ocupa del el hoy, el día de
is only
hoy.
concerned about today.
How, now, Stephen, you mentioned it was very difficult
Dices que fue muy difícil
to become a Sabbath observing preacher.
cambiar a ser un predicador del sábado también.
Sí.
What made this possible
¿Qué
for
hizo
you?
esto posible?
En realidad,
And really,
lo que estamos haciendo en los valles
what we're
valdenses
trying
es,
to do in the Waldensian valleys
en primera cosa,
is the first
es predicar
predicar
la verdad.
the truth.
Cuando las personas abren su corazón a la
When they
verdad,
open their hearts to the truth,
están dispuestas a entender la profundidad del mensaje.
once they open their hearts to the truth, then they're open to understand the deepness, the deep things of the truth.
Si yo le digo a un valdense, bueno, tenemos que observar el sábado.
If I tell a Waldensian, hey, we got to keep Sabbath,
Lo primero que hacen es cerrarme la puerta en la
the
cara.
first thing they're going to do is slam the
No,
door in my face.
no. Lo importante es que lleguen a Cristo y se encuentren con ese Cristo que no conocen.
The first thing they have to do is to accept Christ, because when they're confronted with Christ that they don't know,
Porque se transformó en una religión hueca.
because they're in a hollow type of religion right now.
Y luego cuando está Cristo aquí,
But when Christ is in our heart,
entonces no hay problema a dejar el viejo hombre y las costumbres.
then there's no problem of leaving the old man behind, including the old customs.
And speaking of the old customs, as his
Y hablando
custom was,
de los costumbres
he
antiguos,
went into the
como
synagogue
dice
on the Sabbath
en el
day.
Testamento, como era su costumbre, Jesús entró al sinagoga en el día sábado, como era su costumbre.
Exacto.
That's the original custom of our Lord.
Yeah,
Sí.
that's a good point.
Pero las costumbres de Jesús eran las justas.
But he said Jesus' customs were the right customs.
Yes.
Lo difícil es cambiar las costumbres que son equivocadas.
But the hard thing is to get rid of the customs that are not right.
Eso lo dejamos solo al poder del Espíritu Santo.
The only way we can get rid of those customs is with the Holy Spirit helping us.
If asked Stephen whether he would talk about his personal story of why he became a Sabbath keeper.
¿Por qué hiciste en su historia personal? ¿Qué fue lo que por qué cambiaste a guardar el sábado personalmente?
Profundizando en la herencia de la historia valdense,
He says, when I was studying deep into the history of the Waldensians,
nos damos cuenta que hemos sido manipulados.
I found that we had been manipulated.
And that precipitated where he is now
Y eso causó que donde
speaking
estás ahora,
to
Sí, sí.
Adventist
estás hablando con
universities and
universidades
teaching.
adventistas enseñando.
Sí, sí, sí.
And
Exactly.
Muchos me han dicho,
Many
bueno,
people have told me,
¿por qué no vienes a ser parte de la iglesia adventista?
why don't you come and become part of the Adventist church?
Pero yo creo que adventistas hay muchos.
He said, there are a lot of Adventists already.
Ron,
Quiero continuar a ser valdense para llegar a mi pueblo
I
valdense.
want to keep on being a Waldensian so I can reach them
Yeah.
with the same truths of the evidence.
Yes. Ron, we have just about 1 minute for you to talk to our audience about what your heart is for this very special guest that you brought to our studio today.
I believe that this is a miracle of God, that we have a Waldensian pastor that has lost everything, including his wife. He's lost his position. He's lost a lot. He's suffered because of the truth, and he's trying to bring back the truth to the valleys. You know, we have a prophecy where Ellen White said that in the last days, God would raise up some people that would take the message, and the light of the whole valleys would be lit up again, and many people would return to the faith of their fathers. And I believe that God is working through him. And personally, I believe that the Waldensian, as they used to be, the Waldensian church, this is our model for today. And I believe that if we would follow that model, in fact, the 4th chapter in Great Controversy is all about the Waldensians. I would encourage everybody to read that chapter.
Ron, if somebody wanted to get in touch with you on behalf of Stephen, how would they get in touch with you?
Probably the quickest way to do that is to call 509
Okay.
240 5054.
You'd be-
509-240-5054. Also the State Line Church, because we're setting up a fund for him to support him, because he's a professional cook, and we don't want him to have to go back into manual labor and everything to do this truth.
Well, we have to leave it there. Thank you, Stephen, for coming on our set today.
Gracias
Thank you
por
for
venir.
Ron for interpreting for
Thank
us.
you.
And thank you for joining us on Valley Viewpoint. I'm Roger Johnson.